but they didn't get into like, oh, what an APR is, what that means if you miss a payment. Now you've gone from like 6% on your credit card to, whatever, 29%, however much they used to jack it up, and how that makes a huge difference and how much more you're paying for over time for this item that you got, and how much more expensive it winds up being.
On this episode of the Harness the Power of Planning podcast, Natascha and I talk about advice that we would give our younger selves. And we also talk about our hilarious ladies' night out on this episode, starting now.
Happy Thursday. I'm Natascha.
I'm Alegre. And together we are Beyond Your Wildest Dreams.
And welcome to our Thursday chat. We do this every month. I said, welcome to our Thursday chat. We do this every Monday. You can tell I've only taken 2 sips of coffee so far today. We pop on here and we chat a little bit, and then we have our topic. And it's usually centered around planning, parenting, and always the mission is to help you prioritize yourself, save time, and achieve your goals. And that is what BYWD is all about. And that's what we're here to chat about today.
Yeah, and we have a topic every week. And this week's topic is advice we give our younger selves. However, before we get into that, we also do chit chat. So before we start talking, before we started this video, Natascha and I had just been talking about emergency preparedness, because if you watched 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I did a live chat just by myself about emergency preparedness. And I included a PDF. It's a 34-page PDF. It's quite long. However, I had created this PDF for a talk that I did, and it is very specific to earthquakes, although there is some information for general emergency preparedness. The live chat that I did 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, it really is only discussing 2 pages in that 34-page PDF. So if that 34-page PDF sounds overwhelming, just know that you only really have to look at 2 pages to follow along with this podcast. And basically I break down emergency preparedness in 3 steps. And so Natascha had said, I'm definitely going to watch that when I get back from my silent retreat. And so she was just telling me that she looked over it, and I thought.
There's just so many smart things in there. Lots of things that I've already done, right? Like things that I was like, oh yeah, I've done that. But things that I need to update that I wasn't even thinking, like, oh my goodness, I need to update some of the numbers actually, like on the emergency card. Things like that, and overall, just kind of like go and check the things that, because things expire, like you put it in your emergency kit. So we have backpacks in each cars and in each bedroom, right? We don't have I've never gone ahead and done like the really, really big emergency kit thing where, you take like a rolling garbage can and fill it up, right? One of those ones that has like a water at the bottom, blah, blah, blah. We haven't done that, but we have the emergency backpacks, and I'm like, I need to go through those, make sure the stuff in there hasn't expired, make sure that, because when I first did them, the kids were much younger. And so they didn't have like a cell phone or whatever else. And I'm like, oh, I have to make sure they have the emergency cards in with the phone numbers, because nobody remembers phone numbers anymore, right? I mean, I know my husband's phone number by heart and mine. I don't even know my kids' watches phone numbers by heart. I just don't.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know it by heart. I definitely don't. Yeah. It's just, anyway, so I got to update all that stuff. So it was really, really great to go through that and be like, oh yeah, I didn't think there's a couple things in there that I had not thought of, and then just going ahead and checking, because also like the backup shoes that I put in for the kids. Cause you usually want to put in a pair of sneakers or something, because if it happens in the middle of the night, you probably barefoot, right? So to just have a pair, I've got to go through that and realize, I bet you I'm sure the shoes in there for the kids are too small, that kind of thing, so it just kind of like, especially with all these, I had a friend who was in Asheville, North Carolina when this hurricane hit. And it's just one of those things where, and she was very lucky, she was staying there in an Airbnb, and somehow she lucked out. It wasn't terrible damage. They were just without electricity for a while, but neighboring towns, I mean, like, some really devastating things happening. And so it's called preparedness for a reason, right?
Yeah.
It's not emergency, hindsight, it's like, being ready, and it can make a huge difference.
Yeah, because the thing with emergencies is you don't know when they're going to happen.
Yeah.
And so you have to be prepared if you have, any hope of operating in a way that makes sense. Like, for instance, I created these little cards, and I talk about it at great length in the podcast. These little wallets. Actually, I have it right here. I can even pull it out because it literally is in my wallet. It's this little wallet-sized card, laminated. And I told my family, and by the way, this is great that it's happening, pre-holidays, because families all together, and this is a great time for you all to chat about it. I actually gave my family these cards that I had made the day after Thanksgiving. We sat around and we talked about these cards and why they were important. And I could tell they were getting a little overwhelmed by everything that I was sharing. And I said to them, look, worst comes to worst. Just remember, Alegre gave me a card. I need to find that card and look at that card. Because it literally says, grab flashlight and light stick and shoes under bed. Okay. Hopefully you don't need that, but you might.
Right.
You might be like,
yeah, this is a great point. Like, all you actually have to remember is look at the card. You don't have to remember all the other steps, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm realizing that, like, now my kids have their own little, smartwatch, and they have their own set of keys to the house, and they bring their little wallets places now. Like, they have it in their backpack. And I'm realizing, oh boy, I better put one of these cards in their wallets now that they're teenagers and they have their own wallets and stuff like that. Yes. There really wasn't a great place for that before. I mean, I guess in their backpack, but they don't always have their backpack on them. So yeah, it's so timely, because of just, unfortunately,
all the stuff going on,
all the stuff that's going on. And B, I'm like, oh yeah, we're in a different stage of life now. And my kids are going to be at a different level of, expectation around preparedness. So that was like a really, really good reminder.
I'm so glad. Well, and so for those of you who are listening to the podcast, if you go to tinyurl.com/BYWDEP, so that stands for Beyond Your Wildest Dreams, Emergency Preparedness, BYWDEP, you can sign up and you can get this 34-page PDF. But as I mentioned, it's a lot of background info. I did create this for a presentation that I did. I am not certified in, I did do the Community Emergency Response Team certification, but I'm not an emergency responder. I just like to be prepared, right? It kind of goes hand in hand with planning. It lowers my anxiety when I do this stuff. I'm not kidding. Like, I sleep at night because I have this backpack ready. Yeah.
And it's funny you say that, like, around the holidays, because like a few years ago, I asked for Christmas, like, an emergency radio, like a full, like, we have some, first aid kits, but like a really like comprehensive first aid kit and stuff. And my mom, who is an accessory lady, like, she was like, you want this instead of like a new purse? And I was like, yeah, because I also had like some tote on my wish list, and I was like, you know what, I'd really rather have the emergency preparedness stuff. And she was like, okay. You know what I mean? And like, just, they did not understand, like that, like, why would you choose like this really like unfun thing? But it does, it for sure lowers my anxiety, to know, like, okay, I can check it off, because otherwise it just kind of runs, oh yeah, I got to do that. Yeah, I got to do that.
Yeah, it's an open tab.
Exactly.
In your background.
Did the background noise fix?
Yes.
Or no? Okay.
Yes.
Good. Awesome.
Yes.
All right.
So, actually I gave my family this really great gift, and I'm trying to find it. It might not be available for sale anymore, but I gave my family this really great gift. And if you sign up for our mailing list, I'll add it to the show notes for this podcast, so that when every Thursday we send out an email with like, hey, we've done a podcast, I'll include it in the show notes. I'll look for it. But it was this great light bulb, and it's an LED light bulb, and it's got a plastic face, right? So it won't break easily. And the LED light bulb can be charged 3 different ways, including with a little solar panel that's included with it. And
amazing. Yeah.
You can charge your devices with this bulb. So basically the bulb acts like a battery, and it's a bulb, right? And it has a hook on it. So I actually use this camping, right? Because you can hang it anywhere. Yeah, it's so great. And what I do is I put the solar panel on the dashboard when we're driving to go camping. So it's charged by the time we get there. And so anyway, this is what I gave everyone as a Christmas gift, a number of years ago, because I thought, this is just a good thing to have, like, in general.
what's so great is the technology is getting so cheap too. Like that, like to have a solar panel a couple years ago is like really kind of expensive.
I
You're like,
know.
geez, do I want to
Yeah.
spend the money on that for something that I maybe might use someday? Right. You know, and
Yeah.
so it's just gotten so much cheaper to have that kind of technology. You know, great that you have
Absolutely.
another use for it with camping and so forth. But some people are just kind of like, what do I need a solar panel light bulb for? You know what I mean? Like just flick a switch, you know, but now it's not cost prohibitive anymore. You know, it's
Right. And you can just have it
accessible.
like on your patio or whatever the case may be. Oh, I found it.
Right.
I found it here. So I'm going to
goody.
include this because
Yeah.
yeah, it's such a great gift and it's such a great just thing to have around the house. Here, I'll include it right now so you can see.
Yeah,
what it
because I
looks
feel like, you know, it almost feels, gosh, I feel like it's almost like we're like a little bit of an infomercial where you're like, it gives you peace of mind, but it legitimately gives you peace of mind. You know what I mean?
It does.
Like to have these kinds of things handled.
I mean, if you've ever had something in your life that is just, oh gosh, I have to do that thing. I have to do that thing. This is that same thing on a smaller scale if it's something that you've been thinking about, you know? And so for me, it is something that I was thinking about. And so, yeah, it was an open tab in my head. And so to be able to close that tab was really, really nice. And
yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And this kind of tangentially reminds me of my boys we don't have babysitters anymore. They're at that age where they can stay home alone. But back in the day when I did have babysitters, I just had like this info sheet basically, you know, that had my number, my husband's number, my kids, you know, their blood type, the name of our doctor, their medical record number, all the things, the numbers of our neighbors, all of that kind of thing on a sheet on the inside of the cabinet inside in the kitchen. And so, you know, when maybe it's their first time coming over or something, but all of it just being in one place and being able to just also having like poison control number on there, just in case, you know what I mean? Because sometimes you just, in those moments where you panic, you're kind of like, what do I do? I don't know what to do. You know, and a big thing across, like if it's an emergency, just dial 911. I wrote on there, you know, as well, like just kind of like, hey, listen, if you don't know what to do, call 911, you know? And that kind of like just having one little go-to spot for people to have like, you know, a touchstone and having an understanding of what's going on. Because I remember when my parents would go off to go to a friend's house or dinner party or whatever, you know, they'd write on a legal pad, like, here's the number of our friend's house, you know, because back in the day, you couldn't get in touch with the parents like you can today with the cell phones and stuff. But having that kind of thing. And then it may even be a great thing to like have this little copy of the card that you're talking about, along with that everyday babysitter information that you maybe keep aside for the sitter, you know, just as like also like, hey, here's a little cheat sheet just in case, because, you know, again, you never know. And in those moments where somebody's not prepared, they may need some guidance. And that card is just a really great little cheat sheet.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I had the same sheet on my refrigerator if someone was here watching my daughter. That included like a picture of her insurance card.
Yes.
Because, you know, I have my insurance card with her. I have her insurance card with me.
Yes.
And so that way they have the information in case they need it.
Exactly.
And
so
of course,
we just used the number, but I didn't do the photocopy. That's a good idea too. I just would put their medical record number. So it's some way to access it, but that's a smart idea too. Just a photocopy, right? Just put it up there. Like all the info's there.
Yeah. And now we're taking it to the next step actually, because now that my child goes to school outside of the home, you know, hopefully, and again, when you listen to the podcast, this will all make sense, because the first stage of emergency planning is to just plan so that your family can figure out, okay, if something happens and we're separated, how are we going to meet up again? That's really step one. Because the reality is if you're worried about your family members, you're not going to be able to do anything else until you have some peace of mind about where they are, right? And so now that she is not in the house all the time, I said to her, hey, if for some reason something happens when you're at school, because, hey, they're at school a third of the day, it could happen. Of course, you should stay at school. But if for some reason, if you have to leave school, okay, we do have ways to contact each other, cell phones. If for some reason you have to leave school and the cell phones aren't working, we need to pick a message drop spot so that I know where to find out the latest information about you. And so basically what that means is finding a place, a perimeter place by her school where I know that she would leave me a note. And the whole message drop spot thing I talk about in the podcast, because again, if your family members trying to reconnect with each other, you come up with an idea like, well, mom's house is the safest house. However, I passed by brother's house on the way to mom's house. So I might as well drop a message there so that brother knows, hey, I'm on the way to mom's house. I'm healthy and fine. And it is Monday at 5:55 p.m. So that they just have an idea of where you are in case you can't talk to each other.
Right. And that happens. Like my friend who got caught in this hurricane, you know, her cell service was out, you know, like I texted her a bunch of times because I knew where she was. And I was like, girl, you okay? You know, and she was able to get a phone call through to me hours and hours later. But, you know, she's like, it's really random whether we have service or not, you know, so that is a very real thing. Right. Plus, you know, everybody's using their cell phone at the same time in a situation like that. Good luck, you know, so.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah,
and there is really one piece of advice too that is a good piece of advice that I did not put, and I should update the thing. Of course, if I update it, then the link won't work. But anyway, I won't update it right now.
Oh, technology.
Yes, but I heard this great thing where someone was saying, hey, if you're hiking and your battery for your cell phone is about to die, or you know you're not going to have coverage at some point in the walk, change your outgoing message to, hey, I'm hiking here. You know, if for some reason you get this message and you don't hear from me, this is where I've been.
Very smart. That's really smart too, because sometimes when you leave to go someplace, to go to the trailhead, you have a plan to go somewhere, but maybe you change your plan, right? So that's really smart. Yeah. Because you know, if you're going hiking, you should let people know where you're going hiking and so forth before you leave. But you know, things change, right? So that's very smart. Yeah.
Things
the outgoing
change.
Message. Yeah.
So the outgoing message might be an opportunity. So again, in an emergency situation, if you can record an outgoing message and say, hey, everyone, I'm fine. You might not be able to contact me. You know, whatever the case may be. Like one thing that they tell you is actually that you might not be able to call within the same city, but you might be able to call out of state.
Right.
Just because of the way cells are arranged.
Yes.
And so anyway.
Yeah,
I'm glad you found it helpful.
Oh my gosh,
Natascha.
it was so great. Yeah. This is why on my kid's emergency card, I include my sister who's way out of state, right? So as a person to call in case exactly that, you know. So it's like, well, why would you have somebody in Washington's emergency number, right? Because of that exact reason. It's important to put somebody out of state on your emergency card too.
Exactly. And so for anyone who is listening or wants to get that PDF that I put together, go to tinyurl.com/BYWDEP.
Is it /EP?
Oh, sorry, /EP. Yes.
Right. So BYWD.com/EP.
tinyurl.com/BYWDEP.
Got it. Cool.
I had the slash in the wrong place. So anyway, Natascha and I did something really fun that I absolutely want to talk about. Which is still not our topic, but it was so fun.
It was a blast.
It was so fun. I'll let you tee it up.
You want me to tee it up? Oh, okay.
Yeah, tee it up.
We're talking about last Friday, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm like, we do a lot of fun stuff, you guys. So Alegre just hit me to these really hilarious duo moms. Hashtag I'm mom so hard. They are very funny. And Alegre was like, hey, your birthday's coming up. She knows I love comedy. Of course, she loves comedy. She was like, let's go. I'll take you to this really great comedy place. And these moms, as a comedy duo, they were hilarious. They were so fun. And what was so great is because the crowd was, of course, mostly moms, because that is their, and then a couple of dudes and there, a couple of dads, you know. But man, it was so fun and relatable because these ladies are about our age, right? They're experiencing the same things we experienced, and it was just really a laugh riot. And my favorite part, I'm forgetting their actual names, so forgive me. But
so they're a comedy duo, and they call themselves "I'm Mom So Hard." So check them out on YouTube.
Right. I don't remember their actual. I think Jen and Kristen or something. I'm not sure what their actual names are. Okay. My favorite thing that they did that was just so funny is that they went around the audience and just grabbed random purses from people and then took the contents out on stage, and it was just freaking hilarious. Right? That lady who just like glasses, readers, glasses, like 5 pairs of glasses. And
and she was like putting them on.
She was putting them on her head. I mean, so funny. Like, and just, I mean, so things you can absolutely relate to, just that bit with the taking the stuff out of the purses was so hilarious.
funny.
Yeah, really
And
funny.
they actually have some video on YouTube of them doing this at other shows because it's one of the things that they do everywhere.
Yeah.
And it is always hilarious. Always hilarious.
So
And
funny.
it was funny because when I go out, I always switch to a really small bag. So I was glad that they didn't take mine because like mine would not have been hilarious. Mine had the
They're like
bear.
emergency card.
Yeah.
Preparedness.
No, that wouldn't have been in there,
They're like,
right?
Bummer.
Yeah. But I thought, of course, when I got home, I was like, oh my God, if I had my full bag with me, they would have had
a field day.
Field day.
Totally. Yeah, completely. Absolutely.
Because I basically bring my house with me because, again, part of wanting to be prepared is that I want to be prepared.
We're basically Boy Scouts at heart,
Totally. Yeah. It's which is why I have my bag for when I go out, so I can be bare minimum. So anyway, it was hilarious.
So if you're a mom, you will love these ladies. I Mom So Hard. They are really hilarious, super relatable, just, telling it like it is with lots and lots of laughs in between, like really, really funny. Yeah.
Yes. And they're on tour right now. So they live in California. So the tour started in California. So if you are not in California, that's awesome because you could actually go see them. And I'll just put their website right here into the URL right here. It's just imomsohard.com. Super easy.
So good. So funny.
So grab some mom friends. Be sure to wear waterproof mascara because you will be crying laughing. That's how hilarious.
Right. And maybe even just like a panty liner pad because like sometimes when I laugh too hard, I pee so hard. So just a little heads up because
oh my God,
you
so
will laugh.
funny.
It is funny. Yeah, they're great. Thank you for that. Thank you for my gift. It was great. It was a great night out.
Yes, it was such a fun night out. Okay, so today's topic is advice we would give our younger selves.
Talk about preparedness. Talk about 2020 hindsight preparedness.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I guess another way of thinking about advice we'd give our younger selves is advice we would give our kids.
Right? 100%. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But somehow the question falls a little differently when you think about your younger self. I guess you got a little more specific. Like you really should have said yes to that opportunity.
Totally. Right. So it's not universal per se, but like I was thinking about that, when you picked the topic and I was, thinking about like, so what would I tell myself? Like on a more like universal scale, and I think we've touched on this many podcasts ago or many chats ago, just better financial literacy earlier on. Right. So we've talked about how like, please take one of these civic classes and pitch it and teach kids like even just a semester of personal finance and how things work like that. I wish I had understood better that making a late payment on your credit card really makes a difference, right? And often I'd have the money to make the payment. It's not like I didn't have the money, but I just kind of was like, oh, I'm a couple days late and not recognizing that makes a difference. You know what I mean? That kind of thing, like not realizing like, oh, every time you pay on time, that really helps your credit. Oh, every time you pay a little more than the minimum, that helps you pay it down faster. Like I just didn't have a fuller scope of what that was. Like the extent of the financial literacy that my parents gave me was like, hey, here's how you write a check and balance a checkbook. Cool. That's like not even relevant anymore. You know what I mean? But they didn't get into like, oh, what an APR is, what that means if you miss a payment. Now you've gone from like 6% on your credit card to, whatever, 29%, however much they used to jack it up, and how that makes a huge difference and how much more you're paying for over time for this item that you got, and how much more expensive it winds up being. Like having that understanding earlier and how that would help me build my credit, which would help me later for purchasing bigger things. That would have been so helpful. And I'm talking to like, the US education system right now, like
absolutely,
please, like let's give the kids some real world. Yes, geometry is important. Algebras. Yeah, sure. But a semester, we can keep it. We can dedicate a semester to personal finance because, man, that would have been super helpful.
And I do think it's available now in LAUSD in our public school system. I do think it's available now as an optional math class once you've completed
all your requirements.
The required math classes. That's what I've been told. I haven't investigated this, but
Yeah.
that's a cool thing. So check it out. It might be a good reason to encourage your kid to do algebra freshman year
Yeah.
rather
Or
than
maybe,
sophomore year, because I
and
think
yeah,
that's
yeah,
how you
yeah.
can do it.
You can,
Yeah.
and they probably offer it as a summer school class, but
Oh,
if you want
yeah.
to do things in summer school, I did when my son was younger have my kid take an outside class, but he was so much younger that I don't think that he really dropped it in fully.
Yes.
Plus, and it just it's just a whole nother. It's just a whole other animal when they're a little bit older and they have a little bit more understanding of like what money really is. Like he was
Absolutely.
maybe in like fourth grade, and we did it like a Saturday class, like several Saturdays in a row. Which he enjoyed, but I don't know. He probably couldn't tell you anything he learned in that class today. So
I
yeah.
love that. Financial literacy. That's a
Yeah.
great one. Great one.
Yeah, that would have been helpful.
So I think my first advice I'd give my younger self is to take advantage of unique opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard this saying recently that really resonated with me, which is that when you're young, the rare seems regular.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning when you get a rare opportunity when you're young, you're like, oh, I'll pick that up next time it comes around.
Right.
And it doesn't come back around.
You just think that like, oh, this is just my life, right? People are just giving me all these opportunities. This is just how my life goes.
Yes. And so there have definitely been opportunities I said no to that I wish I hadn't said no to. And
100%.
so that is a big one. And that's definitely something I say to my kiddo. Hey, this is a unique opportunity. I don't think you should pass this up. It might not come around again. I know you think it will, but from experience, I can tell you it probably will.
Right. And if it does, great. But hey, take it. Yeah, that's such great advice. I can't tell you how many times I've looked back and been like, oh wow, I really thought that would come around again when I was ready.
When you were ready,
when you're ready, or in a different place, or whatever. Yeah, that's really good advice. I mean,
and I can also tell you with 50 years of experience that I've never regretted anything I've done. I've only regretted things I haven't done. So
even things that don't work out, right? So you took that opportunity, it didn't quite work out, but that's okay. You learned stuff from it for sure.
Yes.
You also kind of learned like, okay, that kind of opportunity in this particular way is not right for me. But you never regret taking it. I agree. Like I still think about things that like my initial instinct was like, ooh, go for it. Yeah, I still like I would kind of bubble this out or ripple this out a little bit more from that advice of like following my instincts a little bit more. Now when you're younger, your instincts aren't necessarily always spot on, right? But you get this feeling like, oh yes, like an impulse like that. And I've talked myself out of that impulse so many times. Like, and I don't mean like, oh, buy those red shoes. Like, oh, I want to get, I'm not talking about like my instinct was, I always use this example. Like I was in this really low level singing competition. It wasn't really anything. It wasn't high stakes, but I think about it all the time because it was just a really good example for me of not following my instinct, right? So it was one of those things where it was the very, very last competition. It was down to 3 people. And the song choice, I chose a song that was like the safe choice, because
interesting.
They didn't let you practice. You just had to go and sing it, right? You weren't allowed to practice. And this other song choice I had that I was like, oh, I think I could nail it, but I've never really sung it before. And I'm not really sure. And I asked if I could practice it. They're like, sorry, we don't have practice time for that. You just got to go. So I took the safe choice, and the safe choice was good, but I wound up tying with the other person. And then we swapped songs. That was how they figured it. They said, you sing his song, he sings your song, and then people will vote. Right. But I went a few weeks later to a karaoke bar and picked the song out that I originally had this like, oh, I think I could kill it. And I killed it. And I was like, So that wasn't a high stakes thing, but
and then the judge from the competition was in the audience and said, if you had sung that, you would have won.
Again, it wasn't high stakes, but it's just reminding myself, I'm like, you have good instincts. Don't talk yourself out of them. Like that first impulse is, often the right thing. And I think that out of fear or out of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be judged or whatever, go for it, really. Cause like so much, I think that's, that's kind of wrapped up in a few things where it's just like A, follow your instinct, and B, don't talk yourself out of it because of the way you think you might look to people, or it might, It might
Mhm.
seem too much or too greedy. I think this could be maybe not uniquely, but I think women are often like, oh gosh, how's that going to look if I really go for
Mm.
it? Too ambitious, too,
Mm.
I don't know, thinks too much of herself or whatever. But that instinct often really works out, and man, I've talked myself out of too many good things. Really. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Okay, so the next piece of advice that I would give my younger self is so I'm not a big TMI person in terms of like, I don't really think there is such a thing as TMI if it's, helpful and useful information. So my sex talk was given to me by my dad one time when I was in high school on the drive from home to school. So it's approximately 22 minutes of my life was the sex talk by my dad. So I'm already like, my dad's giving me a sex talk. Like, this is very uncomfortable.
The worst.
And the message that he left me with was, don't get pregnant. And
that sounds like
in
a
my
dad's
mind,
number one concern. Yeah.
Well, and in my mind, I was like, well, that's what condoms are for. And so, I know his goal was like, don't have sex. And I heard, make sure you don't get pregnant. And I already knew that there were these things called birth control, and anyway. So, and by the way, PSA, condoms work. I've only taken one pregnancy test in my life, and she is now 14 because condoms work. So anyway, what I would wish someone had said to me was telling me more about the emotional baggage of physical intimacy. Because if my parents' goal had been for me to be more thoughtful around my physical the partners that I was intimate with, and maybe delay my experience, I think if they had said, hey, when you're intimate with someone, it's emotionally heavy, and there's so much science that backs it up. Like, you can't control the fact that oxytocin is released when you are intimate with someone, and intimacy as simple as hugging, right? And oxytocin just binds you to that person emotionally. And the question is, do you want to be bound to that person emotionally? And no one was asking me those questions. Like, is that someone you want to be bound with emotionally? Like, they don't seem to have their stuff together, or they don't seem very stable, or they don't seem to treat you well, whatever it is. I wish they had talked to me about the emotional toll. And I don't think they knew it. So I don't think they could have spoken about it.
But this is advice to your younger self, right? So
exactly. Advice to my younger self, and advice that I've absolutely already started giving to my kiddo, because there's so much brain science. And as you know, if you listened to this before, Natascha and I are big brain science nerds. There's so much brain science about how physical intimacy affects the brain, especially the female brain. And there's also a lot of science behind the fact that when you engage in, it's called comprehensive sex education. And there are Northern European countries that are big advocates for comprehensive sex education. And if you want to find out more about that, there's a great book called Beyond the Birds and the Bees that I highly recommend. I'll find the thingy for it so that the QR code, so you can look it up. But they have shown that comprehensive sex education reduces domestic violence, delays first sexual experiences, increases the benefit, the satisfaction with first sexual experiences, reduces pregnancy,
STDs,
all these benefits.
All the things. Yeah, I'm sure that there's much less of those things. Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
So that's advice I would have given my younger self, and it's absolutely advice that I give my kiddo.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Yeah, I got that. At least you got it on the way to high school. I got it on a break on my freshman year of college. I was like, you're a little late. Like,
oh my goodness.
Like, yes. Can you believe it? Because my mom was like, well, now you have a college boyfriend. So now we're going to, Excuse me. That's talking about closing the barn door after the horse has left the barn. I was like, okay, Mom. There's no way my dad would have had that conversation. So your dad's way more progressive than my dad never would have had that conversation. But yeah, we started talking about that much earlier than when I was a kid, much earlier with my boys. Yeah. Important. And of course, consent and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Excuse me. So that's some really great advice as well. Yeah. Pardon me. I'm going to mute myself because I have a little something I'm going to call.
That's okay. I was actually going to wrap it up because it is the end of our time for this week. So thank you for joining us this week. And next week, we're actually going to be talking about coming up with a game plan for the holidays. Mm-hmm. We wrote a book called Rock Your Holidays. You can see it right there on the screen. There's the QR code.
Only $8 right now, you guys. And it really makes $8 well invested because, it's October. We're coming into that holiday rush. It's not too early to think about, of course, Halloween costumes, but what's happening later this year, it's not too early to think about it.
Yes. And we're going to be talking about it next week, having a holiday game plan, because the whole reason we wrote Rock Your Holidays is so that, parents, moms, often we are the ones who are in charge of making the magic. And many of us enjoy that, but in charge of making the magic for the season. However, we also believe that you all are worthy of experiencing the magic as well. And we know that when you do a little bit of planning, you can ensure that both things are happening. And that's what Rock Your Holidays is all about.
Yeah. So join us for that next week. You'll definitely get some good tips to reduce your stress and increase your joy around it. We'd love to hear what you wish you could tell your younger self. So pop that into the comments too. We read all that. We'd love to hear what your advice is. I'm sure there's really good advice out there for your younger self. So feel free to do that, please.
Yes. Thanks for joining us.
Dream wild, wild dreamer. Thanks for joining us for the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen.